I'm sure we've all had days where we just feel so tired, it's like we can't even keep our eyes open. I mean, we're all busy as students and parents and teachers, but try to imagine feeling this way every waking moment. Well, this is what people with type 1 narcolepsy feel like every day. Narcolepsy is a disorder that not many people actually know much about, but it is, in fact, a serious public health threat. So let's take a deep dive into what this disorder is actually all about. Narcolepsy is described by the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke as a chronic neurological disorder that affects the brain's ability to control sleep-wake cycles. It affects approximately 1 in 2,000 people here in the United States, though this number is not consistent globally. In places like Japan, for instance, it's as common as 1 in 600 people. Now, narcolepsy is a disorder that is not often appropriately diagnosed, and according to a 2015 review article titled Narcolepsy by Thomas Scammell, approximately half of affected patients are undiagnosed. When it comes to the symptoms involved, there is a useful acronym to help you remember all 5, and that is CHESS. The first symptom is cataplexy, which crucially distinguishes type 1 narcolepsy from type 2 narcolepsy. Cataplexy is defined as a sudden loss of muscle tone, ranging from partial to complete loss, and it is often triggered by strong emotions, such as laughter. The second symptom is hallucinations, and these can be hypnagogic, meaning occurring as you are falling asleep, or hypnopompic, meaning occurring as you are waking up. The third is excessive daytime sleepiness, which the NINDS, once again, describes as characterized by persistent sleepiness, regardless of how much sleep an individual gets at night. The fourth symptom is sleep paralysis, which I'm sure you're all fairly familiar with, but sleep disturbances are the fifth, and this can be thought of as falling asleep incredibly easily, but also waking up or being disturbed just as often. It's crucial that we look for these symptoms within the first 2 decades of life, as the peak onset of symptoms is age 15. The average time between this onset of symptoms and the average time between the onset of these symptoms and receiving a diagnosis is about 10.5 years, though according to a 2004 study from Morris and colleagues based in the UK, they found that this can range from 1 to even 61 years. Now, when it comes to the mortality rates, a 2014 article titled Increased Mortality in Narcolepsy, published by Ohayon and colleagues to the journal Sleep, they examined the rates between a population with narcolepsy and a population without narcolepsy between the years 2008 and 2010. And they found that the population with narcolepsy experienced mortality rates 1.5 times higher than those without. And these specific data they collected can be seen in the graphs on the left hand of the screen. Now that you know all about the basics of type 1 narcolepsy, let's take a look at the epidemiology. According to a 2002 study from Longstreth and colleagues, based on the medical care of Olmsted County, Minnesota from 1960 to 1989, they discovered that the prevalence of type 1 narcolepsy was between 25 and 50 per 100,000 people per year. And the data for incidence of type 1 narcolepsy is a bit confusing and difficult to find, but this same study found that it was approximately 0.74 per 100,000 people per year. Clearly, this is some older data, but a more modern 2020 study from Akavea and colleagues found that the prevalence per 100,000 people actually increased about 14% between 2013 and 2016, though these numbers did fall within the estimates of the 2002 study. The specific datum and population demographics of Akavea's study can be found on screen. It's important that we consider how old this data is and how many gaps can be found within it. And this just means that more modern research specifically, is needed to help determine whether these changes are legitimate and due to a shifting number of cases, or rather a shifting understanding of the disorder as well as the diagnostic criteria. So now that I've informed you of the prevalence and incidence, let's take a look at the etiology. And I will begin by saying that the definitive cause of type 1 narcolepsy is unclear, though there are some strong hypotheses. One of those hypotheses being a correlation between a genetic predisposition, seen in the figure on screen, exposure to infections or illnesses such as strep or H1N1, and then the development of narcolepsy. The NINDS, once again, says that type 1 narcolepsy follows a seasonal pattern and is more likely to develop in the spring and early summer after the winter season, a time when people are more likely to get sick. And this occurs because this genetic predisposition makes it that when you are infected with these illnesses, your body not only fights off the illness, but a specific neuropeptide in your brain called orexin. And orexin is responsible for regulating sleep and arousal. So when these neuropeptides are damaged, eliminated, or attacked, you are likely to see narcoleptic symptoms within you. On rare occasion, narcolepsy is said to occur as part of an injury to the hypothalamus, so injury to the brain. And this is also where orexin can be found, though, so yet another correlation. It's not all biological, though. The social determinants of health also play a significant role in this diagnosis. For instance, since narcolepsy is a chronic disorder that relies on the ability of the patient to receive an overnight polysomnography, as well as a subsequent multiple sleep latency test, if they are unable to attain these medical services, they might experience a delay in diagnosis or even receive an improper diagnosis. Social status and community, as well as education, they also play a role. If you are uneducated on the general symptoms of the disorder, you might struggle to identify them within yourself or recognize that they're a problem. And if you lack the social support and accommodations, you might struggle to cope with the symptoms of the disorder. All right, now that you know all about type 1 narcolepsy, what interventions can we implement to help people with this disorder? Well, for starters, we can set back school start times. And this is specifically done so that teens and those around the critical age of 15 can have a schedule that better aligns with their natural sleep tendencies. We can additionally offer greater acknowledgement of ADA protections for people with narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is considered a disorder or disability, rather, in specific situations. So there are employer-mandated accommodations regarding schedules, including scheduled in naps during the times of day where you find you are most tired to help you cope with that excessive daytime sleepiness and other symptoms of narcolepsy. Crucially, and one of the biggest changes we can make is the implementation of sleep education in school health classes. One of the big reasons for the delay in diagnosis of narcolepsy is due to a lack of education on all people's parts, doctor, patient. So by providing teens and younger generations the tools necessary to better understand this disorder and identify the symptoms, it can provide them the means to take proactive steps to protect their health and seek care when they notice the symptoms within them, preventing them from potentially suffering for years in silence. Today, I have taught you about type 1 narcolepsy, and it is my hope that with this information, you have a better understanding of the disorder. I urge you to show sympathy for those with the disorder, to vie for further funding into this often mysterious disorder. I encourage you to support the implementation of sleep education in health classes, and crucially, I hope you now recognize the significance of this public health threat. Thank you.